Hello, and welcome to another game of Guild Ball. This time we have Blacksmiths versus Ratcatchers. I'm trying to branch away from alchemists, so going forward I'm learning the smiths. I recently had the opportunity to play a lot of matches with my friend who plays Ratcatchers, and after a couple we decided to record the rest. So here is game number one of those recordings. Due to some inexperience and clock pressure, there will be some mistakes here and there, but it's a very exciting game, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I did. But first, let's look at the lineups and the game plan cards. For this game, the Blacksmith are receiving, and I chose Faris as my captain. The rest of the lineup is Bolt, Furnace, Cast, Hearth, and Veteran Cinder. The Ratcatchers are kicking with Piper, Squeak, Miasma, Skulk, Scourge, and Veteran Graves. I had some mixed feelings about my cards here. Seeing both sevens was very comforting, so I know that in a draw he cannot beat me. Give me 110% is also a great card for the Blacksmith, getting that precious influence either when I'm down on momentum or if I'm so far ahead I can risk going for the +1 initiative. Cool Head is also very good against Ratcatchers and their disease mechanic, so I was pretty happy with the card effects. However, I felt like my spread was a bit extreme, having both the two ones and the two sevens in my hand before discarding. I don't really like Sidestep, and Mudslide wasn't really going to be very influential this game, so they are mostly there for the numbers. Not seeing any of the sixes also made me think that my opponent could probably have a lot of high cards, even though he didn't have any of the sevens. For the Ratcatchers, they received quite an even spread, maybe a bit on the lower side of the spectrum. Not seeing any of the sevens is of course very disheartening, and only one six, and I could see that affecting my opponent's decision on whether or not to dump momentum throughout the game. Hit Emerge Hurts, Raw Enthusiasm, and Lock Them Down are really good cards against the Smith though, but Boot Sponsorship isn't very interesting on this pitch, as you'll see, and Play to the Crowd is very situational. However, having a 5 and a 6 is good enough. The spread is good, so he can pretty much choose what he wants to go for. So I think overall, I maybe like the Blacksmith cards better, but overall, I think both the hands are acceptable. Piper jogs off the pitch and kicks the ball slightly over the line in a true Guild Ball fashion. I prepare for the classic Faris receive, where you use her legendary on the first turn in order to get a lot of free passes and generate loads of momentum and movement for your team. So we allocate influence and off we go. Okay, so the first activation of the game is going to be Faris. She's going to sprint and get the ball while also quick-footing cast so that she gets +2/+2 movement for the rest of the turn, which can be very good for extending her threat range at the later points. I pass the ball to Hearth for free using the Ride-Off legendary. I get the pass and I consider whether I should dodge Hearth or not, but I elect to keep the momentum and stay right here. The next activation is going to be Piper. He's measuring out some stuff here. He sees that I'm within 6, so I'm already within Pay the Piper range if he wants to do something with that. He elects to buy Pay the Piper. He then declares a charge on Faris. Since I don't want to give him momentum, and I also kind of want to save the momentum for the counter attack that I know is going to be relevant later, I don't declare any reactions. So he measures the charge, and he goes for it. So the charge results in a momentous double push dodge. So that's a pretty good result, and he chooses to push Faris towards his own team and then dodge closer to Hearth. The Ratcatchers have a lot of choices here on how to attack the ball on the first activation. I think this activation is pretty neat. He starts off by using his heroic to push Hearth closer to him. He just has to measure some stuff first. It's kind of All this positioning is very exact and deliberate. So anyway, he does the push, bringing Hearth inside of one of Piper, and then he declares the attack. I declare the counter, thinking it will be irrelevant, but he gets the momentous double push and just pushes me outside of melee, making my counterattack void. He then uses Swarm's Obedience, pushing everyone within 8 inches of him, 3 inches towards my goal. This of course brings Hearth back into melee range, and it ruins my deployment line, which means that Piper can then buy another attack on Hearth. And he gets the momentous tackle push. So with that, he has the ball, he has momentum, and he declares a bonus timed shot on goal, which results in a goal, bringing the score to 4 for the Ratcatchers and 0 for the Blacksmiths. He considers dodging away towards his team, but he in the end decides that it's better to be more annoying with Pay the Piper inside of cover in between all of my guys. And I agree, it's going to be annoying. But yeah, that ends Piper's activation, and we're off to a great start. Next, I'm going to kick out the ball. I'm not really sure where to put it, but I end up placing it on the sides here, trying to get it to Hearth. It scatters and it hits Faris. I elect not to pick it up with Faris in order to not kill the ball, and I don't really want to activate Bolt yet to do the I'm open shenanigans. So I actually considered leaving it on the ground, but then Squeak would actually be able to just run up and legendary it away. So luckily, I decide to pick up the ball with Hearth. So Hearth collects the ball, and she delivers a successful pass to Cinder. Both Hearth and Cinder use pass and move, giving Piper one more momentum. And I start to see just how annoying it's going to be having him lying on the floor with Pay the Piper active. I buy an attack with Hearth, and I get the momentous knockdown. Next, Skulk takes a couple of steps forwards and uses his two abilities Pest Control and Horrific Odor, which gives everyone in his range -1, -2 kick, and making kicks within 6 cost 1 more influence. I think this is mostly to make sure that if both or cast try to go for the goal, they'll have a much harder time, and basically just making that really inefficient if I choose to go for that. Next, Veteran Cinder activates, and she hits Piper. Since I'm at +2 attack here, I score a Momentous Impale, which does 3 damage and burning to Piper, which sets up casts to do more damage later in the turn. I spend the last influence to pass the ball to Bolt, and I do another pass and move to get into a more forward position. Since Faris was pushed away from my lines, I also have to get Bolt closer in order to trigger Tutelage, otherwise I'll miss out on the free character play. So, Piper gets another momentum. I officially hate Piper at this point, and we're only halfway through the first round. Next, Veteran Graves sprints up, Squeak tags along. He then throws a They Ain't Tough on Faris, giving her -1 armor. And I think it's at this point that I also see that Squeak is setting up to kidnap Faris, which would be very bad for me, considering that the major bonus of actually letting him score the goal is that I get to kidnap his captain. But if I just give him my captain and he gets the goal, then I think I'm just at a major disadvantage. So I have to try to fix this somehow. So I go with Bolt to try to save her. I do the stamina jog and I make sure I'm outside of Pay the Piper this time. I pass to Faris for free using Ride Off, and then I dodge both Faris and Bolt backwards. I then use I'm Open for free, getting the ball back from Faris, and then pass to Cast. All of these are successful, so I just rake in the momentum, and I feel like I'm in a pretty strong position right now. The next activation is Miasma, who very bravely leaves her deployment zone, electing not to risk getting caught in any bullshit so she doesn't die. With her virulent strain aura that makes all the enemies with disease get -1 attack and -1 defense, she really is the linchpin of the Ratcatchers fighting plan. If she goes down early, the rats will really struggle versus the Blacksmith defensive stats, so it's probably for the better that she stays a bit defensive. Up next is Furnace. I consider either attacking or tooling up Cast. I figure since Piper is already very crowded out and it's best that he is left alive until the next turn, I don't really need tooled up. He's also on fire, so basically I do a truckload of damage already. So instead I elect to attack with Furnace, scoring a momentous push, taking out of cover and into Cast's melee range, which makes everything that follows a bit easier for me. Furnace then jogs a bit further up the pitch to project Sentinel for my apprentices for the later turns. Then Squeak sprints up. Cast activates, and this is the last major activation I have. So she hits Piper. The first hit is a momentous 5 damage. Because of the burning, the 4 becomes a 5. Second hit is a momentous 3 shield glare, um, which gives him -1 attack and -1 defense. And at this point, Piper is so low that if I were to do any more momentous damage with Cast, I would kill him. So instead, I elect to pass the ball to Bolt for free, dodging off the pitch in order to get Cast into Squeak. I figure I can get a couple of points of damage into him as well, and making it easier to kill him early next turn. Um, I also dodged Bolt up with the ball to threaten an early goal, but I believe it might have been a mistake going so aggressive with the ball. I don't really need to. It might have been better to just simply slowly advance up the pitch while having the ball safe, especially since Piper, who is the major goal threat in this game, is already sort of handled for the time being. But anyway, I figure I project some strength, so I dodge Bolt up and go in with Cast. Um, In any case, I'm pretty happy with the game at this point. I think, like, sure, Piper scored, but he's more or less jailed. I have all the momentum I could ever want, and Cass still has 2 more influence. So, what could go wrong, right? So, I jog into Squeak, and I declare an attack. He counterattacks, which probably should make some alarm bells go off in my head, but I just go on my merry way and roll my dice. I did score only 1 hit, doing a single damage, but I do the double dodge into base to base with Squeak, figuring I could get 1 more momentum with my next attack. However, that's not gonna happen because my opponent bonus times the counterattack, scoring 2 hits, which means Dreadful Shriek, which is exactly what I was trying to protect Faris from, but which I now simply walked into with Cast instead, which is much worse. I contemplate my existence while watching my opponent measure 9 inches for a Cast jog with Quickfoot. Cast simply runs straight into the enemy lines, getting herself into 2 melee zones and next to a Scourge who I have not activated yet. So, at least I did 1 damage to Squeak, right? I end my activation, and yep, next activation is Scourge. So Scourge activates and he simply jogs next to cast, he attacks and he scores a non-momentous knockdown. The second attack does momentous 7 damage, taking her to 6 health. He then ends his activation and spreads disease to cast and skulk. And that's the end of turn 1. You can see the hit points on the screen, but notably Piper is on 2 health and Cast is at 5 health. Blacksmith are at 7 momentum, Rats at 3. The Blacksmith play Cool Head, which is a +3 card, and the first momentum use is for free. And the Rats play Hit 'em where it hurts, giving -1 armor to Bolt. Okay, so the Blacksmith go first, and I'm not clear on what my game plan is here anymore. Since Cass was supposed to be my missile for turn 2, I'm not really sure about what to do. Do I try to save her? Do I score? I spend a lot of clock measuring and thinking, but I elect to not do any of the aggressive things, thinking that they would just let me lose the game faster. So I instead retreat into what I believe is a safer game plan, and then try to move forward from a position of strength. So Bolt activates, he stamina jogs back and goes into Piper. I attack him, wrapping and scoring a momentous dodge and momentous 2 for the takeout, giving me 3 momentum. So Blacksmith goes to 2. I then pass to Cinder. I pass and move both of them. I then use my free character play to get the ball back and then pass to Cinder again, bringing me to 5 momentum and a Cinder with options for later in the turn. Skulk activates, he puts up Horrific Odor and Pest Control again. I think my opponent here believes I might try to score, but this just confirms that keeping the ball safe for now is the better move. He buys an attack on Cast, getting a momentous 2, bringing her to 3 health. He then jogs a bit to the side and making his auras a bit more relevant. Next, Cast activates, she just stands up. That way I don't lose the activation advantage that I got from killing Piper. Next, Squeak charges Faris. I declare a counterattack. Maybe I should have defensive stance, but I'm thinking he's gonna get the character play anyway, and I was figuring that he might try to charge and stay within Cinder, and so Faris would be able to actually get the counter. But he charges in such a way that he's not inside 2 of Cinder, and he bonus times and wraps, so he gets Dreadful Shriek and Momentous 2 damage. So Faris jogs 5 inches backwards, which is annoying to see, seeing as she has quite a lot of influence on her. Next, Furnace jogs up to give Veteran Cinder someone to hide behind later. Sadly, I couldn't get him into cover, but it does do an attack on the rat, scoring a momentous 1 Searing Strike, which gives burning and -1 armor. Um, and now, since I've moved Furnace up, I'm thinking I should prolong the life of Cast for as long as possible, so I use Cool Head to heal her for 4 for free. Um, so hopefully she will be more annoying to take out. Next, Veteran Graves jogs into cover, being in both range of Furnace and Cast. He first attacks Furnace, scoring the knockdown Dane Tough. He then attacks Cast and does the same. And the last attack is on Cast, wrapping, doing a momentous 2 plus 1 damage. Next, Hearth jogs up to engage Squeak. Miasma goes, and she buys an attack on Cast. With 4 extra dice and Virulent Strain, she hits everything, doing Momentous 2 and 3 damage for the takeout, so Ratcatchers goes to 6. With Cast dying before Scourge even gets to activate, I realize that Furnace is now probably just gonna get eaten by Scourge. I'm gonna try to fix this with a ball, so Cinder goes and she jogs to engage the rat, but staying outside of 9 inches of Scourge. I use 2 momentum to clear conditions on Furnace and then attack Squeak, getting a momentous Impale, which I do on Graves, doing 3 damage and fire. The next attack wraps, doing momentous 4 and momentous 1. I try to intentionally not kill the rat quicker than I have to because I want to get as much momentum as possible. But the next attack I do momentous 4 for the takeout, taking Blacksmith to 3. I then bonus time a tapping pass to Furnace, who is engaged by Graves at the moment, but I get it. So I dodge Furnace towards Cinder, which both saves Furnace and also gives Cinder a Sentinel aura for next round. Scourge goes next. He sprints in order to be relevant for the next turn. This does actually bring him into range of Faris, who luckily for me can quickfoot herself and sprint 12 inches, getting right next to Scourge. I do an attack. I sadly don't get the knockdown, but I do a momentous double push, trying to set up a favorable situation for a Cinder charge next turn. So, at the end of the turn, Blacksmith are on 8 momentum, Rats on 6, and condition damage ticks down. The Blacksmiths play risky play because I desperately want to go first, while the Rats play raw enthusiasm, giving Graves put me back in coach for the turn. Scourge gets the +1 attack, and here we go. So Squeak and Piper comes on, and they position themselves around the fast ground. Graves and Scourge loads up for some big activations, putting some pressure on me to somehow get rid of them. I really want to kill Graves, but he's in cover and he's not in any ganging up ranges, so it's a bit rough. And now that he has put me back in coach, he's gonna make use of his influence one way or another. Instead, I try to do as much damage as possible to both Scourge and Graves to force some activations, hopefully. So I activate Cinder, I charge Scourge while having Graves within 2 inches. I score 8 net hits, which is a momentous 6 and a momentous 1, but because of Tough Hide, that's only one momentous 5. But I do get the 3 damage on both Scourge and Graves, and a Fire and Searing Strike. I attack again, and this time Scourge counterattacks. I score a momentous Impale, which I take onto Graves, meaning he only has 3 lives left. The counterattack is a Snack Break, which heals Scourge for 6 health, meaning he is pretty much on full again. I consider trying to attack Graves here, but I figure with his cover and the crowd out from Scourge, I'm not really going to do a lot. So I do the last attack on Scourge, doing a momentous 2 down to 1. And yeah, the Snack Break really did undo a lot of my progress on Scourge. And because Cast hasn't really been in the game, I can't really use her to take him out. So Scourge is a problem at this point. Next, Piper activates. He buys Pay the Piper. He uses Haunting Melody on Faris, and I ask him to come to me. And charges Furnace. So he wants the ball, but he is crowded out by Faris here. I maybe should have done a counterattack or something here, but I don't, so I have no reaction to this charge. He gets the momentous tackle push, and then he heroics to push Faris towards the edge of the pitch and attacks her. So since he's crowded out by Furnace, he whiffs the attack, and then he spends his last influence to pass to Graves, which is a very hard pass. He loses 3 dice here, but he gets a 6. So Graves has the ball now and dodges out of the scrum. I can't really afford to give up another goal here, so I activate Furnace and jog in the melee range with Graves. Looking back at it, I see that he has no momentum and he probably would have had a hard time scoring with Graves burning and everything. But I think at this point I was sort of in panic mode and the clock was ticking down, so I thought I'd have to do something now. Since Graves is only on 3 health, Furnace should be able to finish the job here. I give the parting blow to Piper, but he only does 1 damage. The knockdown is really hard for him on a parting blow. But having said that, instead of using Furnace's legendary, which would have given him +1 attack for the rest of the turn, I completely forget that, and I start bonus timing instead to ensure the takeout. The first attack, I don't bonus time because I don't want Graves to get momentum so that he can counterattack me. So the first attack does a momentous 1 damage. And then I figure I'm clear, so I do a bonus time for the next one, and I actually score the unmomentous 2 damage, and I consider whether I should take it or not. But in the end, I just take it, I just want him dead, and I want the ball to scatter, so I take him out, which means that the Blacksmith go to 5, and the ball scatters away from all the players. Furnace uses his last influence to tool up Cinder for any counterattack shenanigans, but other than that, his activation was a bit weird, but I'm happy just having Graves dead at this point. Uh, but Graves come back on the pitch through the fast ground next to Squeak. It does sort of look like Faris is in a bit of trouble having both Squeak and Graves there. But anyway, I end my turn. And the next activation is indeed Squeak, who goes next to Faris and Dreadful Streaks her and makes her run towards Graves and the table edge. However, this is a bit of a miscalculation from my opponent because he wasn't really considering that Faris is quite a good pusher. She has a momentous push very easily on the first column and also a momentous double push on the third column. So Graves is in a bit of danger here. So my next activation is Faris, who does a series of attacks. The first one is a momentous knockdown. I then do a momentous double push. I attack again, doing another momentous double push. And for my fourth attack, I do another double push off the table, taking the Blacksmith to 7. So that was a really lucky break for me. I think if Graves had gotten his activation with the 4 influence, then this would have been pretty much over. But now I'm suddenly back in the game. So Faris sprints back into the scrum, both engaging Scourge and giving Cinder the Sentinel again. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good. So the next activation is Scourge. He removes fire with Salve and then attacks Cinder. Because Cinder is now a 4-2, he doesn't get any hits through the armor. And on his next attack, he gets no hits again. And then on the last one, I declare a counterattack, which gives another momentum to Piper. And Scourge gets no hits again. So that's a very sad Scourge with 3 attacks and no hits at all. Cinder does the momentous 2 on the counterattack and gives fire back onto Scourge, which is really important. He ends the activation, giving both Faris and Cinder disease. Next up, Hearth just jogs up and engages Piper. Then Skulk removes his disease through Salve and sprints to the ball and back to cover. So the Ratcatchers have the ball again, but the ball is sort of dead for this turn at least. Next, Cass jogs towards Skulk and heals herself. Miasma scuttles along in the back, doesn't really do a whole lot. Bolt jogs up into Sentinel of Furnace and, very importantly, within 6 of Faris. The turn ends and conditions to damage. The Blacksmith are up buy 7 momentum and play Give Me 110%, which gives an extra 2 influence. And the rats play Lock Them Down, giving Cinder -1 attack. I activate Cast and I jog into melee range with Scourge and I buy an attack. He does not declare a counterattack since I'm within Sentinel. So I do a Momentous 5 down to 4. I dodge into cover as well and declare another attack, which is going to be another Momentous 5 down to 4. I attack again. I get a Momentous 3 down to 2 shield throw, which I do on Skulk, scattering the ball. Unfortunately, it scatters 1 inch towards the cover, so it just bonks on the cover and Skulk just picks it back up. So I declare my last attack and I do the same thing, which results in a momentous takeout and another shield throw, which scatters the ball towards the top of the pitch. I then dodge into Furnace so that cast is safe. I'm almost clocked out at this point, so I don't really consider that maybe instead of going for the ball and trying all these scatters, I should have just focused on weakening Piper and Squeak as much as possible because I only need 3 points. But instead, I'm sort of blinded by the ball, so I still try to get it. The next activation is Skulk. He jogs and picks up the ball and puts up Pest Control and Horrific Odor. I go with Bolt next. He gets Tutelage and he Stamina jogs next to Skulk. He bonus times a free Shoomerang onto Skulk, which lands. We scatter the ball yet again, and it lands directly on Miasma, who picks it up. I was really hoping for a scatter where Bolt could either steal the ball or end the game with it, but at this point it's very unlikely for that to happen. I still go for it. I charge Miasma, which was definitely a mistake. By endangering yet another apprentice, I'm really gambling on this working, but for it to work, I would have really needed to wrap and to get a lot of good results, and I don't get it. He declares the counter on the charge, so even though I do tackle the ball, he tackles back on the counter. I attack again and tackle the ball, but then I'm out of influence and the ball is now stuck on Bolt. I clocked out during this activation, so the rats go to 7 points. The next activation is Veteran Graves, who jogs up to Bolt and throws an attack. Unlucky for him, he whiffs it, so he doesn't hit anything. He buys another attack, and at that point he gets the tackle, but now he can't pass the ball either, so he ends his activation standing there. Hearth attacks Piper, getting a non-momentous 3 damage. The next attack is a momentous knockdown. I then jog into base contact with Piper and activate her legendary, which gives her a 3-inch melee, and that's just in order to make Piper's life more difficult. And the rats go to 8. Next, Piper activates, he forfeits movement to stand up, and he heals himself up to 7 with a momentum. He activates Pay the Piper, and then he buys an attack on Faris, which scores a momentous push. He does the same again, another momentous push, and he ends his turn. I then activate Faris, thinking I really have to kill Piper at this point. So I attack Piper with a bonus time, which gives Piper yet another momentum. I get the momentous stagger, I buy another one, I get the unmomentous 3. I do the same, I get a unmomentous 2, and the same again for the takeout, taking me to 11. This takeout cost me a lot of momentum and gave my opponent a lot of momentum. So I didn't quite think through what was going to happen at the time. I think the clock pressure got to me. I just wanted the points as quickly as possible, but now I really lost the momentum lead. With Faris's last attack, I attack Squeak and I only get 1 hit, so I do the momentous push and jog into a more relevant position. The rats go to 9 points. Squeak charges Bolt. I do a defensive stance. The attack does a momentous 2 damage. Furnace then jogs to give Sentinel to Bolt. The rats go to 10. Miasma attacks Bolt and hits her Guild Ball, doing a Radicalism on Furnace and Bolt. Then Cinder moves up and spends 3 momentum to heal Bolt. Based on the cards in my hand and the momentum score after the whole Piper ordeal, I reckon I can't win the race, so I spend it to make sure it goes into something useful. With that, the rats go to 11, so we're now at 11-11 going into the last round. At this point, my opponent will definitely win the momentum race and he can go first. He has 7 seconds left on the clock, meaning that there will only be one more activation in this game. Either he wins or I get the clock point. Since Bolt is in such a vulnerable position and on 11 health, the obvious play is to kill him. So I play Sidestep, my opponent plays Boot Sponsorship. So I play Sidestep in a desperate hope that that might improve my odds somehow. The Ratcatchers promptly dodge 3 players around him, jailing him. I move some Masters into support, so at least he has Sentinel, but with Disease and Virulent Strain from Miasma, it's gonna be tough. My only saving grace is that since Scourge just died, he doesn't have Disease himself, thus he doesn't have his damage bonus. We don't allocate influence beyond the 3 that Scourge gets here, just because either he wins or he loses. Scourge comes back from the edge, he jogs in with 3 influence and he attacks. So with attack 10 against a 3-2, the first attack does a momentous 3, and the second one with a bonus time does momentous 5 plus momentous 2, and the third attack does enough momentous damage for the takeout, taking rats to 12. And there you have it. That was a very fun game, and it really highlights how brittle the apprentices are when you don't take good enough care of them. And my opponent put a lot of pressure on me, using the clock to his advantage. If I wanted to win, I needed to play quicker and make better decisions. All in all, it was a solid training experience for both parties, and thank you for watching. See you next time.